In 2005, I was in Abuja, Nigeria. One of the things that I was working on was to do some homework on trafficking, as on my return, I was going to be the sponsor for the government on criminalizing trafficking in Canada. I was taken to a detention center where I saw a number of girls from the age of 9 to 14 who had been intercepted as they were being flown at the airport in Abuja, as they were being flown to Italy. These young girls had been brought from northern Nigeria, knew very little English, and they were going to be taken to Italy at first to work as nannies, and then later on as street workers. I just couldn't believe my eyes when I saw these young girls. I don't think they had any idea as to what was going to happen to them. The innocence on their face is something I will always remember. They were absolutely lost as to why, first of all, their mothers had sold them. Then they had ended up at the airport thinking they were being brought down to study. And then now they were at a police detention center not knowing what was going to happen to them. I don't have a good story to tell you to say I know what happened to them. All I know is I met with them. And when I met with them and I asked them questions, they had no idea as to what was trafficking, why they were being sent abroad. All they knew is they were sitting in this detention center, absolutely confused. That was my first experience of what trafficking does to young girls. I had read about it. I had seen movies. I had heard about trafficking from friends, but I had never come face to face with it as I did that day at the detention center in Abuja. No doubt these girls have left a tremendous impression on me. And I often wonder, did they in the end get trafficked? Or did they get sent back to northern Nigeria and their lives are just as bad? Who knows? But I came back knowing that we in Canada have to do more globally, nationally, and most importantly, locally. As a legislator, I am often looking at ways in which to improve the legislation so we can find ways in empowering women all over the world. 2005, I sponsored Bill C-49, which created 3 new criminal offenses to specifically address trafficking in persons. And today I come here not as an expert or know a lot about trafficking, but all I know is that I have to work with all of you to make sure that we do end trafficking, especially in our country here in Canada. I want to talk more about 2 forms of trafficking, and that is sexual exploitation, and I know that there are much more experienced people on the panel who will address that. And the other one that I believe is very important for us, especially in British Columbia, and that's forced labor. I want to find ways in which we can work to stop these things, especially in our country. As the vice chair of the Committee of Human Rights in the Senate, I've urged my colleagues, and my colleagues have agreed, that we will be doing a study on the sexual exploitation of persons with special emphasis on children, including questions of trafficking in children, child prostitution, sex tourism, pornography, and the sexual exploitation of children on the internet. If I can just touch one of those, and that is sex tourism. As you all know now, we have legislation. But what I'm confused about is, yes, we have legislation, but are we enforcing it? The two cases that we've just had them, by chance. What resources are we putting to make sure that Canadian men do not go abroad and practice sex tourism? The study is going to look at issues facing Eastern European women who are trafficked into our country, Asian women who are trafficked into our country. I was told by many people in South America, women from South America were trafficked into our country. And I was recently in Mombasa, Kenya, and I was absolutely floored, which I saw very young girls, 6, 7, 8, being trafficked into Europe. They're so innocent. And when I was speaking to them, they also had been stopped at the airport. Of course, they had no idea as to what was going to be happening to them. And so I'm hoping that our study will look at ways in which, because we also, besides Canadians practicing sex tourism, we are also a receiving country on many indirectly, and so we have to find ways in not just looking at issues here in our country, but even internationally. I have had my staff do a study around the trafficking, and the outcome of this research, I believe, is a better understanding of the realistic potential for an increase in domestic sexual trafficking and other forms of trafficking, especially in anticipation of the 2010 Olympic Games. I was involved with German women when the World Cup was being in Germany, and I was just horrified when I went there and saw that they had literally warehouses where they were going to be bringing women from Eastern Europe just during the time of the games. And this is legal in Germany, and so it was even harder to convince the German government that this was not an appropriate way to deal with women. And I'm very pleased to tell you that, and I know that we have a representative from the NGO speaking. It was the NGO's strong voice that in the end had fewer women get trafficked into Germany, but that was because they had a strong voice. So today, I come to you to say to you that we also have the 2010 Olympic Games coming to our province. And each of you who have given up your afternoon, you've given up your work to be here because you care. I ask you that you also be very vigilant, that our province is not used as a place where women and children are exploited. What my office has found that the raw data collected indicates that human trafficking of foreign nationals for the sex trade is not likely to occur or increase as a result of Vancouver hosting the Olympics. However, which is what really upsets me, is domestic sex trafficking will be perpetual. There'll be a lot more of it. And what we have found in our study, sadly, is that more Aboriginal women will become vulnerable and exploited during the Olympic Games. Just a few weeks ago, I was walking downtown with an amazing woman, Judy Graves, and I have walked with her a number of times at night. We walk all night to see what's happening. In the last time we walked, I cannot because I have no way of backing it up, but we saw so many more young Aboriginal women who had just come from the reserves. And I'm very embarrassed. I'm ashamed that I represent you, to say that I represent you, and in my province there are young Aboriginal girls that are being trafficked. They come from the prairies, they come from the reserves, they have nowhere else to go on our streets, and they are being abused. Domestic sex trafficking will increase in the anticipation of Olympics. The existing criminal structures and the easy flow from the US into our country will make it likely that new girls will come and move into our area for a short time. So maybe we will be able to stop girls internationally or women coming into our province, but we will not be able to stop the domestic trafficking if each of us do not do something about it. That is the information that my study has shown. But if you have any other information, it is my job to hear you and to find ways in which we can stop women and children being trafficked into our province. The thing that has been preoccupying me a lot lately is forced labor. And I am really concerned that British Columbians have not been as vocal as they should be, because this is happening in our province. This is not happening in a small factory in Pakistan or in another country. This is happening in our province. The primary concern is the construction industry, and it has highlighted the abuse of people coming from other countries. Where is it being abused? It's with the temporary foreign workers. I would like to share with you some examples, because it's the best way to show you what is happening. Many contractors have chosen to rely on immigrant labor in order to meet the work demand. A number of cases have been reported in Vancouver of exploitative work conditions and abusive employers in the construction industry. Several articles have been written by the British Columbia and Yukon Territory Building and Construction Trades Council on their dealings with the RAV line. Workers, primarily Latin American construction workers, brought into Vancouver to work on the New Canada line of Vancouver SkyTrain, which will link the city center to the airport in Richmond, BC. Last summer, I was representing you in Mexico, and I can tell you I was very embarrassed when I went and spoke to some parliamentarians who gave me a real told me what, Canada holds itself up to be absolutely a paragon on human rights, and we protect people's rights. And they said, Mexican workers are coming into your country. They're living in very poor conditions, and they're not being paid well. And what is your government doing? I didn't have an answer for that. Therefore, I'm starting to work on how I believe that's trafficking. And I think it's happening in our province. And so today is a very important day to highlight that. The BCTC noted that although promised approximately $40,000 to $50,000 per year with extended work hours, 66 hours per week, workers were only being paid $1,000 monthly, or approximately $3.77 per hour in their first month of work. Other workers in Vancouver brought from the Philippines for North Vancouver's Water Tunnels project were found living in squalid housing conditions, 8 men in 2-bedroom apartment, and still having $817 per month deducted from their wages for meals and accommodation. The workers indicated that they have been intimidated by a company that had recruited them, so they didn't complain until the project was discontinued and the workers were left without any income. These stories indicate the pressing need to discuss this form of exploitation that is happening within our province. I know you might ask, how does this happen? Because we pride ourselves with such high human rights standards. For low-skilled workers, there are few options of work in Canada. The federal government offers temporary foreign work program, which is implemented by issuing a temporary work visa or through special programs designed to bring in agriculture or domestic workers. Construction work does not have a special program, and when a company wants to hire a foreign national, it must obtain a labor market opinion from Human Resources and Skills Development Canada that indicates that the company has advertised for a Canadian worker. While here, the employee is not able to work for any other employer. If he or she wishes to change the employers, what happens is if the employee comes here and is not being provided with good work standards, they cannot change their jobs. They are stuck with the jobs in which they are. What worries me very much is that currently, although construction workers are, and I can tell you when I was in Mexico, I heard from construction workers who said that they are promised that when they come here and work for a number of years, they can apply for permanent residency. There is no program as such. They have to return. And recently I was with a European parliamentarian who was looking at this issue. She's come to Canada to look at this issue, and she said that what was occupying some of the people who are working in Europe on the issue of trafficking is that Canada has this temporary foreign workers program, and when their visas expire, often these people who want to stay here then are working under very bad conditions. So I believe all of us have a lot of work to do. I could go on giving you many more examples of what is happening with forced labor, but I'm almost run out of my time. So I wanted today say to you that we all here should at least write to the immigration minister to say that we believe that after a temporary worker, just as in the live-in care program, has been here for 3 years, they should be able to apply for residency permit. I give you my commitment that I am going to try, if I'm able, studying this to bring up legislation so we can make sure that these temporary foreign workers are able to get some kind of, they can get landed or residency permits in our country. I have many recommendations that I would like to make to different levels of government, but time does not permit me to do that, so I have them at the back, and I would ask that you please look at them, and if there's anything that you can help me with or any suggestions that you can make, I will very much appreciate it, because I believe that it's really important. But the one very important one that I think that you all should get right to the government right away, and that is that Canada should sign the UN International Convention on the Protection of the Rights of All Migrant Workers and Members of Their Families. Canada should sign to this convention, which is compatible with the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms in guaranteeing fundamental rights to all people in Canada, including immigrants, or including migrants. I stand in front of you feeling that when we don't treat temporary foreign workers the way we would like to be treated, it's a real stain on the fabric of our communities. None of us can ever now be proud that Canada has a high standard when it comes to human rights, because we don't. We just have to see what the 2010 Olympic construction workers have to face. That's the new Canada that none of us would like to be associated with. In 2005, when I was in Abuja and I saw these young girls with such innocent face, I came home thinking, that's happened in another country. I felt sorry for those girls, but I came home thinking that cannot happen in our country. I urge you tonight to go out to some places in Vancouver, as I have done a few weeks ago. Those young girls have the same innocent face that the girls in Abuja had. The young Aboriginal girls that are living on our streets and being forced to, and are being trafficked or forced to be street workers because we don't have programs to help them integrate into Vancouver. They have the same innocent face that the girls in Abuja had. We cannot be proud of seeing girls in our own city being trafficked. I ask that you have work to do, that I have work to do, that we have work to do. In our very rich country, it is not acceptable that young girls are being trafficked into our city, or foreign workers are being forcefully asked to work so that we shine for our 2010 Olympics. That's not the Canada that you and I love. Thank you very much.